Hey, I'm Madison Mary and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my anticipated debuts for the first half of 2021. So I adore doing this video. I started doing this kind of series last year and it is just such a fun thing to do because during this time when things don't seem to be going as great in the world, debut authors are still releasing books and they maybe aren't getting all the publicity and all the marketing that they really should be getting because, you know, there's just too much going on. And so I like to make this video because I like to put out there, like, you know, that there are these authors who have their very first book coming out this year and that you should really think about checking it out, and I just have a bunch of fun with it. So this is going to be January through June and I'm going to give you 2 books per month. I'm very excited, and yeah, without further ado, let's get started in January. So my January debut is actually going to be Crown of Bones. This is by A.K. Wilder and it is published by Entangled Teen. I was sent an arc from them. I still haven't read it. It actually came out on the 5th of January and my arc reading this month has been a little all over the shop because a lot of things went on at the end of December, so like I didn't have time to get to this, but it is still my TBR, it is still a highly anticipated read for me, and it is a debut. So I feel like the best way to explain what this is about is from reading the back. So it says, in a world on the brink of the next great dying, no amount of training can prepare us for what is to come. A young heir will raise the most powerful phantom in all of Basine. A dangerous high savant will do anything to control the 9 realms. A mysterious and deadly Ma race will steal children into the sea, and a handsome guide with far too many secrets will make me fall in love. My name is Ash, a lowly scribe meant to observe and record, and yet I think I'm destined to save us all. Doesn't that sound awesome? Like, I'm so excited for this, and the tagline on top says raise your phantom, and it just seems like it's going to be such a cool and just altogether fun fantasy to start reading. And of course, Entangled Teen, whenever they publish their fantasies, romances tend to be a huge element of them, and so that just makes me even more excited. I really am sad that I didn't get around to reading it before it came out, but I'm really pumped. And actually I can tell just from flipping through that we actually get more than one POV. I see Marcus and Ash so far, so I'm very excited for this. The next one comes out on January 26th, so you still have time to pre-order it, and that is Wings of Ebony. This is by Elle and I'm very excited for this one. So we're following Rue, and I believe this is set in modern day, like in the very beginning, and her mum is shot like dead on her doorstep. And then her dad ends up whisking her away to this like magical island. And that's when she finds out she's actually half god, half human. And she doesn't really like living here because their magic thrives off of human suffering. And she doesn't really love that she's here. And eventually a year after she's been there, she wants to visit her younger sister on her mother's death. And so she breaks the #1 rule of the island, and that is to leave it. And when she does get back to the modern world, she ends up finding out that her younger sister is actually starting to fall victim to what happens to all of the black kids in her neighborhood, and that is fall to crime and get into the wrong crowd. And she's very worried that the same thing that happened to her mum is going to happen to her younger sister. Rue begins to realize that there's actually a lot more going on in her neighborhood than she realized before she left. So she decides that she has to use her ancient powers in order to save the neighborhood from the gods who are willing to burn it all down. Very excited for this. It seems like it's going to be really cool. It's like a good mesh between fantasy and also like urban fantasy, because urban fantasy doesn't tend to really have, like, you know, a magical island somewhere else where there's magic going on. So it's like a weird blend of the two of them, but I'm very excited for them, and I think that's also going to bring up some really important topics. So the first book I have coming out in February is on February 2nd, and that is Fat Chance, Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. So Charlie Vega is a lot of things. She's smart, she's artistic, she's really friendly, she's funny, she's ambitious, and she's fat. And this last thing doesn't normally bother her, except it really bothers Charlie's mum. And for Charlie, it seems like the whole world has these expectations of her to be thinner, be quieter, and be whiter. Thankfully, Charlie has one friend in her corner, and that is Amelia, who is slim, popular, and athletic, and totally awesome. And when Charlie starts dating this really cute guy named Brian, she thinks that, you know, things are starting to look up, and that this guy is, you know, a really good one, and that she's made herself into like a worthwhile relationship. But that all changes when she finds out that he actually asked out Amelia first. And so it's basically about, you know, her trying to figure out like what's really going on. It's about, you know, Charlie's relationship with her body, her family, her society, and just culture in general. And I think that this is going to be really heartbreaking as a read, but I think it's also going to be like really pivotal for everyone to get into. You know, it's a YA read and it's a contemporary, and I think there's going to have some really hard-hitting topics in it, obviously. But I also think there's going to be some parts of it that are going to be hilarious, so I'm very excited. We have a book that was supposed to release last year that I'm very excited is finally going to be coming out. That is Of Silver and Shadows. This comes out on February 16th. This is by Jennifer Gruenke, and I'm very excited for this one. So we follow Ren, and she is a silver wielder, and this is very dangerous because magic has been outlawed in her kingdom for centuries. She is actually caught by a wealthy rebel leader, and he offers her a chance to escape the petty thievery that she's been doing and actually start making some real money. The only catch is that she won't see any of the coin until she helps him overthrow the king. And then the other POV we follow is Adley Fair, and she is part of the brutal warriors called the King's Children. And they have been tasked with a competition to see who can track down and kill the rebel leader, who is, you know, the guy that we mentioned before. And whoever does manage to do this will become the King's Fang, who is like the head assassin and like warrior of the kingdom. And then the last POV we follow is the Prince of Idris, and he has actually been pulled into the rebellion against his father. So those are 3 POVs. It sounds like it's gonna be really fun. I'm intrigued to see kind of how everything's going to be put together, and also like how all 3 of our POVs will like cross paths. I think it's going to be really interesting. And also the whole aspect of like silver magic has me really intrigued. I don't know like how it's going to work exactly, but I wonder if it's going to be like metal elementsy, so we'll see. Moving on to March. First we have a book that was supposed to come out last year and is now coming out this year again, and it is the Brighton Pale by Jennifer Rubinkowski. So this comes out on the 2nd, and we follow 17-year-old Valeria, and she's one of the only survivors of the freeze, which was a dark magical curse placed over her village, and now everyone in there is trapped under a sheet of ice. So they're all still alive, but they're like, you know, frozen. And ever since then, she's been on the run from the Tsar, who is determined to kill anyone who managed to escape the freeze. So she ends up joining the Thieves Guild with her best friend Alec, and things are going well until he is brutally murdered. But it actually turns out that he isn't dead. He's actually being held captive against his will. And so in order to buy his freedom, she must gather a little group to go rescue him. And I'm guessing that like some part of this is gonna have to do with like solving what happened with the freeze and all this kind of thing. So I'm very excited with this. It's kind of got to do with like dark magic and, you know, a government kingdom that's really evil, and also this girl who's like kind of part of like a thief guild and decides to go on like a heist like rescue mission, and it's gonna be really awesome. I'm very excited for this, but I do have some content warnings that the author has put out, and that is death of a family member, discrimination, childhood trauma, and work camps. So do be aware of those. Then on March 9th, we have Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. I feel like a lot of people probably know of this one by now, but this is a debut author. This is a debut sapphic fantasy. So one of our 2 protagonists is Tamsin, and she is one of the most powerful witches of her generation. And everything is going well for her until she commits the #1 magical sin. Her coven ends up exiling her and cursing her that she will never ever fall in love. And the only way she can ever feel any semblance of love is to steal it from others. Then we follow Ren, and she is a source. And a source is someone who is made of magic but can't use it themselves. And sources are very coveted by the coven because they can be used for their magic, but Ren has actually been in hiding ever since she was born. But when a magical plague takes over the kingdom and Ren's father ends up falling ill, she ends up making a deal with Tamsin. If Tamsin will catch the dark witch who is causing this plague that is killing her father, she will in return give Tamsin her love that she feels for her dad. And so I think it's about the 2 of them on this quest and falling in love, and I'm very excited. I think it's going to be like a lot of grief and a lot of like internal strife and internal growth that we're going to see in this book, but I'm very excited. Plus this cover is like one of the prettiest on here, so. The next 2 books for April both come out on the 20th. The first is These Feathered Flames by Alexandra Overy. So in the Kingdom of Ciannon, when twin heirs are born, they are pretty much cursed with a specific fate. Isabetta gets to remain at court and train to become the heir and the next in line for the throne. And Asya is taken to train with her aunt, who is the Firebird. And the Firebird is the creature that makes sure that magic remains balanced in the kingdom. The only problem is that before Asya's training is completed, she ends up awakening this power inside of her, and that only means one thing. The current queen is dead and a new ruler must be crowned. And so the 2 of them now have to figure out what's going on, like who killed their mother, and also what role they will continue to play in their realm and their kingdom. I'm very excited for this. I do know that there is some sapphic part of this book. I'm not exactly sure what, but it is an own voices thing. I'm a huge fan of sister fantasy books. I'm very picky about my sister fantasy books, but when they're done right, I absolutely adore them. And then we have Witches Steeped in Gold by Ciannon Smart. So we're following Iriah and Jasmine. Iriah has spent her life in prison, in a cell, and Jasmine is actually the Queen's daughter. The two of them are sworn enemies, but they enter an alliance to take down a mutual threat. It is a Jamaican-inspired fantasy, and I'm very, very excited for it. Now we have May, and oh my god, May is such a queer month for reads. I'm really excited. I only picked two debuts, but these are ones that like I'm going to be waiting all year for. I'm so pumped for them. So we have Meet Cute Diary by Emery Lee, and this comes out on the 4th. Now Emery Lee uses Spivak pronouns, which is E and A, and the same thing ends up happening with the protagonist of this story. So we follow Noah Ramirez, and he runs a very popular online blog called the Meet Cute Diary, in which he talks about these trans happily ever afters that occur all over the country. The only problem is that these stories are all fake. And so what started off as a way for him to fantasize about his own trans romances has actually turned into a beacon for trans people around the world. So he's made a mistake. And when a troll ends up exposing the blog as fiction, Noah's world unravels. The only way he can save face and save the blog is to prove to everyone that they're actually true. And then in comes Drew. Drew decides to fake date Noah in order to save the diary, but everything falls apart when Noah actually begins to fall for Drew. And he realizes that dating in real life isn't the same as dating on page. I'm very excited for this, and I cannot wait for it. Then we have May the Best Man Win by Z.R. Ellor. This comes out on the 18th, and I'm really pumped. So Jeremy Harkis is the cheer captain and student body president, and he is not going to let coming out as trans ruin his senior year. And so instead of bowing to the bigots and the school administration, he decides he's gonna make some noise. He's gonna challenge his all-star ex-boyfriend for the homecoming crown. And then we follow Lucas Rivers, who is the football star and head of the homecoming committee. He's just trying to find order in his life ever since the death of his older brother and the breakup of his ex-girlfriend, who turns out to actually be a trans male. But when Jeremy threatens to steal the crown, Lucas realizes that he has nothing else left. He starts a plan to sabotage Jeremy's plot. But when they end up taking things too far, homecoming is threatened to be cancelled. And so the two of them have to work together and deal with the residual feelings that they have. I'm really excited for this one. I think that it's got like a really fun looking cover, but this one, out of all the ones that I've mentioned, I think it's really going to deal with some difficult topics, especially when it comes to internalized transphobia that people don't really realize that they have. I think that it's going to have a lot of really fun times in it, but it's also going to have some really dark topics, so I'm excited. And then finally we have June, and the first one is Jay's Gay Agenda by Jason June. This comes out on the 1st, and so we follow Jay Collier, and he knows that he is the statistical anomaly in his rural Washington town. That's that, he's the gay kid. And when he starts seeing all his friends with their heterosexual hookups and all their heterosexual fun love, he starts to really yearn for his own. So he starts his gay agenda, and this is all of his goals that he wants to complete romantically. Then, during his senior year, Jay's family ends up moving to Seattle, and there is a huge LGBTQIA+ community there. Suddenly, Jay starts to realize there's a huge community of boys he can date, and he starts checking things off his list left, right, and center. He's going all in. But suddenly he finds himself torn between his heart for his new friends and his old friends. And he begins to realize that maybe the list isn't going quite according to plan, and that he might have to revisit exactly what it means to be in love. I'm very excited about this. One thing that's been really pushed about this book is that it's extremely sex positive, which I'm always a fan of. I love books that are sex positive. I think it's especially important when it comes to the YA genre, and so very, 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 very pumped for this. And then the very last we have Ace of Spades, and this is by Faridah, Abike-Iyimide. I really hope I didn't butcher your name. I'm really sorry if you see this. This comes out on the 10th, and oh my stars, am I pumped for this. Okay, ready? This takes place at a private academy, which is always one of my favorite settings for YA. And this is an academy where money rules everything and the students are never anything less than perfect. But an anonymous texter named Aces is threatening to bring down 2 students' lives. Devin is an extremely talented musician, but it seems like his life is going to fall apart when his private pictures are threatened to be posted. Head girl Chiamaka isn't afraid to do what's necessary to get what she wants, but soon everyone is going to find out the price she is willing to pay to win. Someone is out to get them both, and they're planning to do much more than play a high school game. Oh my god, I'm so excited. I love this. It's like a YA thriller in a sense, but it's at a private academy, which is always my favorite setting for YA thrillers, and I'm just like, please keep this one on your radar if you're a fan of YA thrillers, because I think this one's gonna be so good. Those are each of the books that come out this year that are from debuts, for the first half at least. I will of course be making a second part to this in around about July for the last half, and I have such a blast. Let me know if there are any debuts coming out that you're really excited for. I know that all of these were YA, and it's just because that's what I keep an eye on. I just kind of let adults come and go, especially because a lot of the adults that I read tend to be indies, and so they tend to like crop up like a week before they're actually published, and then you're like, oh my god, this is coming out. Like, I have so many authors that are like, surprise, this book's coming out in 2 days, and I'm like, oh my god, okay. So yes, okay, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button down below if you want to see more of me. Please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, thanks a bunch. Bye!